right. Hey, everyone. I'm David Markland with Midsummer Scream. And today we're going to be talking with writer-director Jacob Chase about his new film, Come Play, which is about a kid who has somebody who wants to be his friend come through his iPhone and iPad, but you may not want to be his friend. His name is Larry. But let's bring in Jacob Chase, the writer-director. Hey, Jacob, how's it going?
Hello. Very good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Did I describe the film right? I mean, if people didn't watch the trailer.
Yeah, sure. It's definitely about a kid and a monster who tries desperately to befriend him. That is right.
And the film's based on a short film you made called Larry. Tell me about how that went from short film to feature.
Yeah, so I made the short film, sort of with some friends in a parking lot, in an effort to show I can, make something creepy and atmospheric. And I was very lucky that people responded to it. We sort of got offers from a bunch of the studios to make the feature version, and Amblin was one of them, and I sort of jumped at the chance to work with Amblin. Even though they're not necessarily known for like horror movies right now, some of the scariest movies I grew up on were Amblin movies. I mean, I love Poltergeist, Jaws, the films like that. Even E.T. is quite scary for kids. And the kind of movie I wanted to make was one that was not just terrifying, although it is, but also quite heartfelt and compassionate, full of empathy for characters that are unique. And Amblin just felt like the perfect place to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I watched it the other day. It is scary. It has some great scares in it, which is surprising because it definitely has a lot of. You can see the Spielberg influence in there. I mean, I could see E.T., I could see Poltergeist, I could see all sorts of stuff throughout, and you could tell that you're a Spielberg fan. So to be able to have the Spielberg brand on your first film must be a thrill.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild, honestly. I like I said, I grew up on those movies, so I feel to a certain degree like, how do I ever top this experience? But no, I mean, having his blessing and involvement was pretty fantastic. I heard some amazing stories and learned a crap load from him, and also at the same time, he and his team gave me a ton of creative freedom to make this sort of unique movie I was trying to make. And yeah, I just had such a great time with the process.
That's really cool. I think the thing our audience especially wants to talk about is before you were making films, you were making home haunts here in Southern California. And just before we hopped on, you were saying that you grew up across the street from probably one of the most popular, longest running home haunts in the area, which is called Rotten Apple in Burbank. Can you tell us about like what was the moment, at least far back you can remember, where you were like, I need to make haunted houses?
Yeah, I do remember. I remember the first haunted house I ever went to, which was, I don't even think it was called Horror Nights back then, but it was at Universal back when it was just like a maze in a parking lot. And I was a little kid and I like begged my mom to let me go. She brought me, we waited in line for an hour and a half or whatever, got into the first room. A clown popped out of a Jack in the Box. I started screaming, crying, made my mom leave through the emergency exit. And she was like, what the hell? Like, we just waited all that time. But we left because she's, a good mom. But then the next day I was like, I got to go again. I got to face my fears. And they were doing this like lights on walkthrough of that maze. And I went to that with my mom again. And I made through the whole thing because no one was jumping out at scaring me. And I sort of fell in love with the theatricality of it. I have a theater background even before that. And so I realized, oh, this is no different from making a piece of theater. It's just a scary version of theater, but it's creating a storytelling kind of, some sort of narrative for an audience, many times every time a new group comes through. And so I love that. And when I was maybe I think I was in middle school when I first at my like front porch, like covered it in tarp and like jumped out of a trash can to scare people for Halloween. And I, from that point on, I like didn't want to go trick or treating anymore. I just wanted to scare people at my house. And then, Rotten Apple started doing their thing across the street. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. And it used to be like in their house and stuff. And I remember specifically there was like this one moment where we were like in their living room and like someone like smashed a bloody head against the window. I'd be curious if they remember that scare because it's stuck in my head. But anyway, I was like, all right, let's get my friends together and do that. When I was in high school, I used all my bar mitzvah money to buy like tarp and PVC pipe and plywood and stuff. And all my friends came together and we started making a very sort of small scale haunted house, but at the time it was pretty epic. And of course that eventually became Sherwood Scare way down the line.
That's really cool. Big Worm Sherwood Scare was your haunt. I went to it. It was one of the first times I went to a haunt in LA or a home haunt and kind of realized what people could do in their yards. It was just seeing this new form of artistry, but it was really hard to top what you did because you had a level of storytelling and art design and production design and sets that Rotten Apple's a good comparison to it, but yours, it took a while to go through. It was pretty amazing stuff. So of course we're all wishing that you'd come back to it as soon as you're done with this filmmaking stuff, once you make your millions in that. But can you tell us about like what lessons did you bring from haunting at home to the big screen?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you about Sherwood Scare. I mean, it's still kind of the thing I'm the most proud of that we've ever done. I mean, I was getting to see thousands of people come out the exit every night screaming and laughing and having a great time. Like that's why we do any of this. I mean, filmmaking included, and this film is sort of just like Sherwood Scare on a much bigger level, in theaters all over America. And I often joked that like I'm just doing this filmmaking thing as a backdoor way to get a maze at horror nights or something. But no, I mean, I took a ton from Sherwood Scare. I think one of the things we did at Sherwood Scare specifically was we would often try to not have too many jump scares. We of course did have those, but we focused on the suspense and building the horror and the idea of what was scary as much as the jump. There's this Hitchcock quote that I love, which is there's no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of it. And so we used that in Sherwood Scare, and we would have sort of like these dress rehearsals, as I'm sure most home haunts do. And when we did, like, we would realize like, oh, like maybe that scare is not landing as much as we wanted because one just happened 30 seconds ago. Like, let's pull that one out and elongate the tension for much longer. And so point being, it worked, in a live haunt experience. And then in making the film, I also took that to heart and tried to, of course there's a lot of jumps in the movie and you got to have those in a horror movie, but the suspense was just as important, if not more important to me. And when we would test the film, we'd have these giant audiences come watch it. And I would just like be trying to get a read on the pulse of everybody of like, when are they leaning forward? When are they, really feeling like the suspense is working? And when does it like go too far or the scare like comes at the wrong time? And just like the haunt, it was just trying to read people's emotions and trying to, refashion the edit to sort of work as best as possible with the suspense.
Cool. Yeah. And you got with editing, your editor on it's Greg Plotkin, who has a pretty awesome pedigree of directing some of the best horror films of the last decade, as well as directing some of the best as well. Can you tell us a little bit about working with Gregory Plotkin? Yeah,
Greg, awesome collaborator. I mean, my whole team was amazing, but he cut movies like Get Out, pretty much the entire Paranormal Activity franchise. He cut Happy Death Day. Like he's a fantastic horror editor. But what was great about him is that he also had so much heart. Like he's a dad, and he really understood these characters I was trying to imbue with this very real, authentic emotion. And so I mean, he took obviously all of his experience cutting horror and brought that to this film with me. But at the same time, he brought a lot of that heart to it. I also think, like, I was an editor for like 10 years. And so that was the hardest role to fill, to be totally honest, because I knew it was going to be very difficult for me to not just have my hands on it all the time. And Greg was the first editor that I had sort of met with or worked with that I was able to like relinquish control, and I could trust his instincts and his voice. And, you know, of course we were always trying things and playing around with different ideas. But I, you know, it was a really fruitful relationship.
That's cool. And going back to the haunt real quick, I understand or should I say that Larry itself is this amazing puppet throughout the, film, which I believe is practical. It's mostly a practical effect, which is creepy as hell. And I was asking you earlier about the who designed it, and this came from Big Worm Sherwood Scare. This is actually something that originated in the haunt.
Yeah, originally. The second year of Sherwood Scare, there was this character named the Man in the Lake, which was like this big stilts costume I made in the garage. I was actually the one on stilts most nights, scaring people. I only fell once, but that was scary. And I still had that costume in the garage. And when I was making the short film, I was like, well, I've got, you try to make a short film for as cheaply as possible, because, who has money to pay for things. And I had that costume, and I was like, let's bring that out. That's going to be this monster Larry for this short film. And then, when we made the feature, I mean, we took that general silhouette as the jumping off point. And then I got to work with some amazing creature designers, both from a concept art stage, all the way to the actual fabrication of the monster, which was the Jim Henson Creature Shop made the monster, which is this big puppet operated by like 4 to 5 puppeteers, depending on sort of the way it's set up. And getting to see him on set, this 9-foot tall dude, like having to lean through doorways and stuff was pretty terrifying, even though you could kind of see the puppeteers on set and you couldn't in the film. It was really important to me for it to be a practical puppet. I think getting those authentic reactions out of the kids, especially, this sort of went a long way to help with that. But then also the movie has a lot of technology in it, because this monster sort of accesses you through your technology. And the last thing I wanted was for when you finally like saw this monster, for it to be just more technology. Like I wanted it to feel tactile and real. And yeah, I think the Henson Creature Shop just did really a bang up job.
Oh, they did. It's a spooky creature, and yeah, definitely doing it real is a nice break. It feels authentic. How did the cast react? How did you even introduce this thing to the cast?
Well, I told everyone about it, that it was going to be practical early on. And in fact, that got a lot of actors quite excited about it. I know especially Gillian and John really loved the idea of that challenge of like working opposite puppeteers, and also the less of a challenge of having to be scared, because I think in some movies it might be like a green suit or a tennis ball or something. But in terms of actually introducing the cast, especially with the kids, I took a lot of care to not let them see the creature until their first scene shooting with Larry. So I remember I think it was the sleepover scene was the first time the kids as a group saw the creature together, and we had it like covered in the corner with a blanket. And then when we finally were about to roll cameras, like we took off the blanket, the puppeteers brought him to life, and I'll never forget the kids' first reactions. It was one of both horror and sort of understanding the magic of it all.
Cool. And the rest of the crew you had was pretty good too. You have Maxime Alexander, DP, who worked on Haunting of Bly Manor most recently.
But also, I mean, he shot The Nun. He shot all the way back he shot High Tension. He shot Annabelle Creation. Like he's an incredible DP, who I felt very fortunate to get for sure.
Yeah, very good hands. And I think we've got some questions here, at least one from our viewers. Can we bring one up? We're going to try some fancy technology here. There we go. Toy Lopez asks, I grew up with the monster in the closet or under the bed concept. What inspired you to choose a smartphone tablet as a way to bring those creatures to life?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with that concept as well. I think for me, it was about finding what's the modern day version of that. I think in the past, sort of the access to one of these monsters would have been a haunted book or a haunted painting or something. But today, what is actually ubiquitous about us, around us, is our technology, our screens. And so I was never, my goal was not to make the screens themselves the scary part, just like the bed isn't the scary part in that under the bed concept, right? It's what's under the bed. And in this case, it was sort of what's behind the screens.
Very cool. Well, awesome. This has been great. Thanks for spending some time with us. But I need to ask, what do you have coming up next?
Yeah, I've got nothing I can really publicly talk about, but I've been, I've got a bunch of stuff in development. Most of it more horror genre stuff, which is really exciting, and I keep trying to find more scary things that sort of are outside the box and don't feel like other genre movies we've seen. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to make another movie soon, as people start making movies again.
Okay, you can spend your downtime making a haunted house. It doesn't have to be during Halloween.
Yes,
and
I know.
I did notice. By the way, I did notice there is a big worm Sherwood scare Easter egg in the movie.
There is. Good eye.
And the other thing is, I know you have a YouTube channel that people can Google and see a couple of your short films, including Larry, which this is based on. So they can check that out. And then I hear you're going to try to check out some screenings soon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to, the movie comes out this Friday in theaters everywhere, wherever they're open and safe. So I'm, the closest theaters to me are in Orange County. So I'm going to go down there and see my movie. I mean, it's very exciting to have a movie coming out in theaters everywhere. So I got to go check it out.
All right. Well, thanks, Jacob, for spending some time with us, and we hope to catch you soon.
All right. Thank you so much.